So, Silk Song came out today, but unfortunately for Team Cherry, I'm a little obsessed and I need to talk about it. So, it's just gonna have to wait. Uh, and unfortunately for me, the air quality in South Dakota right now, or at least the area I'm in, is poor due to like smog and stuff. So, I'm just gonna be pacing around in my apartment for the most part. Yippee! But sit down, boys, girls, and everyone else. Ethel Cain, right? Riot. I dedicate this video to that Zach on YouTube. I believe that's his YouTube handle. I watched his video crashing out to Ethel Cain a few times by now. I don't know. I just appreciate his passion. And, seeing someone else's passion for something does make you appreciate it a little more. So, on that topic, the last time is that true? I was gonna say the last time I talked about Ethel Cain, her newest album, Willoughby Tucker, I Will Always Love You, hadn't come out. But I don't know if that's true, because I talked about Ethel Cain, not my last recording, but the one before that. And I think the album was out by then, but I didn't talk about that album. I talked about Ptolemy. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I've been listening to the album more, and I have thoughts, but I have thoughts on Ethel Cain as an artist as a whole. So here I am. So I'm not an Ethel Cain super fan. I learned about her. Was it just last year? Yeah, I think it would have been just last year because yeah. Okay, so how this happened. I think I've talked about it. Yeah, I did talk about it. LOL. Oh well. So I got into this little thing where I wanted like dark, fucked up, evil music. And so my friend Alex one day sent me Ptolemy saying, "Hey, I think you'll dig this." And I dug it. So, checked out Preacher's Daughter and I liked it. That's kind of where I stand right now. I actually wrote a review of Preacher's Daughter on my blog, which you can find a link to in the description. And half the reason I wrote that review was for Ptolemy, but there is a lot to like about that album. There's many good songs on it. There's like a chunk after House in Nebraska that is like kind of whatever to me. Maybe because I haven't like experienced it enough, haven't fully absorbed it. That's just how it is. American Teenager is really, really good. House in Nebraska is really, really good. I love Thoroughfare. Gibson Girl is good. Ptolemy is an incredible piece of work. It's an incredible like work of art. And then Sun Beach Flies sends me to heaven when I hear it. And Strangers is also really, really good. There you go. Now you don't have to read the review. I'm kidding. I give more in-depth, granted, like less developed thoughts on the album than I have now. I wouldn't say I've developed them that much more because I haven't listened to the album that much recently. So, yeah. And then, after Preacher's Daughter, I was on board the Ethel Cain train, kind of. I, at this point, have not listened to like her entire discography. I've listened to one of the EPs. I forget which one. I think the one that came prior to Preacher's Daughter, but I don't fucking know. I've listened to it at one point. I'm definitely not familiar with it though. I'm not like in the know on the Ethel Cain lore. Like, I have a decent understanding of the story of Preacher's Daughter. Beyond that, I'm a little clueless. As far as I can tell, there is like an overarching story between like Preacher's Daughter, Willoughby Tucker, and some other projects that I'm just not like in on that. I know Willoughby Tucker is a prequel. Um, I know Preacher's Daughter involves, I think the main character's name is Ethel. You know, Ethel Cain, as in the moniker that Hayden the artist uses. And I know that she ends up kidnapped and killed and eaten or whatever. And I can follow along with like what's going on in the lyrics of Thoroughfare, for example. I understand the situation, the expectations set up by American Teenager. And I know some of the things that happen in Willoughby Tucker. So there you go. I'm not like a super fan. I think I've already said, basically. I really, really like Ethel Cain's music. I like, you know, some of the themes that she touches on, and I think it is neat that she has an overarching story, though I'm not involved in it at the moment. So that's where I stand. And, you know, listening to Ethel Fan and going down into comments of like YouTube videos and stuff, people are very passionate about this artist, and that's awesome. There are several songs of Ethel Cain's that I'm also very passionate about. Maybe not equally so, which is impressive, but you know, I like them. But I'm definitely not as passionate about her work and don't seem to think of her as highly as some other people, which I guess is inevitable, right? I don't know if anybody could ever call themselves someone's number one fan. I guess I'm trying to like set some groundwork here. I approach Ethel Cain's work with a largely positive like view, but I don't like put her on much of a pedestal or anything. I think she's very, very talented, and she's written some incredible songs, as I'm going to be talking about. But, you know, I don't think everything she's touched is gilded. I haven't heard a bad song from her. It's just, and again, I think it's difficult for a song to be outright bad. I think more than likely it's just a song doesn't work for me. And there are many songs that Ethel Cain has written that do not work for me. The couple of tracks after House, Nebraska that I mentioned on Preacher's Daughter, they just don't do anything for me. A good chunk of Perverts just doesn't do anything for me. The interludes on Willoughby Tucker, it's a strong statement that very well may change as I listen to the album more. Don't feel like they need to be there. Or if they need to be there, I'd like them to be shorter, personally. But, as with all things regarding art and music, that is just me. But Perverts, right? It's a funny thing about Perverts. I was anticipating the release of Perverts quite highly because, you know, again, I don't like everything on Preacher's Daughter, but I really like that album. And of course, you know, I was looking forward to hearing more songs like Tolamai or Sun Beach Flies or Thoroughfare. Those are some of my favorites on that album. But coming into the album, I uh, wasn't keen on ambient music. And I knew that Ethel Cain had a, what would you call it, proclivity for slowcore, as it's often called. There's a bit of like ambience in Preacher's Daughter with August Underground. And when the track list for that album came out, and most of the songs were 10 plus minutes, and a part of me was like, "Oh my god, that's kind of cool." Another part of me was saying, "Oh, this is going to be an ambient album," and it was. And I remember the first listen, it sunk in. Alex and I were in a call. This is how we do these things. When an album we're invested in releases, we get in a call and we listen to it together. And I was even joking with them, saying like, "I bet this is gonna be an ambient album. Look at those tracks, that track lengths." And we both held some skepticism, like maybe it won't be, but the opening track, which I remember opens with like a sample of some gospel song, and then after that, just cuts to nothing but quiet noise. And the longer that noise went on, the more it sunk in that, oh, this is an ambient album, which was an obstacle to, you know, approaching the album for sure. As with uh, a lot of good artists, there are aspects to Ethel Cain's work that, like, are almost obstacles to me fully appreciating or absorbing the music. Um, there's some elements of that in Violet Pony's work, for example. There we go, got the Violet Pony mention in. But I think it's even more so with Ethel Cain because it's largely thematic stuff at this point that like separates me from Violet Pony's work. There's like some things, like there's some songs of hers that I just don't particularly connect with or anything like that. And sometimes the EDM dubstep stuff is hard to approach for me still. But I do more consistently enjoy her sound than Ethel Cain. Because, again, Ethel Cain does a lot of very slow paced ambient stuff. And that's not something I'm accustomed to, like, at all. And it's kind of always going to be a difficult type of music to approach and to really fully appreciate. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. Where the fuck was I going with this? I guess it's just to say that like my first listen to Perverts wasn't all that like productive, I guess, in terms of actually absorbing the album's content and fully appreciating it. But, you know, as I gave it more time, as I gave it more listens, I actually developed like a little bit of a fascination with the album EP. Call it an EP, I guess. It's technically what it's considered for a period of time. Where I stand now, I haven't listened to the full thing in some time. It's again, it's a difficult listen because it's an hour and a half of like dark ambience. At this point, I'm adjusted to the sound, so it's not gonna like deeply bother me or anything. But like I talked about in my last recording, I can still like in some respects feel what was intended with some of those tracks on Perverts, because I think what's really making Perverts work for me, where a lot of ambient music doesn't, is that Perverts has a strong and like recognizable tone to it, like an atmosphere or emotion that it's trying to evoke. Like it's meant to give you little shivers down your spine. That's the consistent thing with perverts. Moments that I can recall are it's gonna be really hard to describe because it's like a noise. I don't if it's an instrument. I don't know what instrument would have been used to make the noise in Punish, but it's a very eerie sound. I really really like it. Pole Drone off of that album. I love that song, which is crazy because half of those 15 minutes are just two string instruments like playing a like would you call it discordant harmony? Eh, I don't have the musical vocabulary to like actually tell you what the technical term for what they're doing is. One instrument's playing one note, the other one's playing another, and they don't traditionally sound good together. The notes were chosen specifically to evoke a like sense of wrongness. They're meant to unsettle, they're meant to sound like harsh and creepy, and it works outstandingly. What really makes a project like Perverts work is that Ethel Cain's sound design is outstanding. These songs have incredible presence. Like they only work if it feels like this ambience is actually surrounding you, and that's not just the case for Perverts. That's all of her work. I'll talk about it with Willoughby Tucker. Yeah, Pole Drone is one of my favorite songs of the year just by the nature of it. Better than like most songs I've ever heard. Giving me like a sense of dread, which is kind of helped by, the spoken word part that Ethel has at the beginning of it. A lot of it is kind of over my head, but the phrase that kind of sets up what the song is to me is like an angel falling, I think is precisely what she says. Which is doesn't there's like a line after it that seems to connect to it. Other than that, it feels like just kind of a disparate thought in this monologue as the strings start to come in. I wouldn't know if it's like a cello or, there's our basic four string instruments: violin, viola, cello, bass. The ones that I know from, taking orchestra class in elementary school. I played violin in fourth and fifth grade, and then the moment that I exited the fifth grade, I dropped both that and the trumpet, which I was also trying to play in fifth grade. And then from that point forward, I had no ambition for anything for like 7 to 8 years. Yippee! Uh, it's one of those. It's one of those. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to just guess that it's a cello, and I'm going to go forward from there. So I'm pretty sure the cello has already come in by the time that Ethel mentions an angel falling. Now, I am not religious, but I was raised in a Christian household. So I'm familiar with, the lore of Christianity. I am aware of that lore, and also, despite many, many years of distance from this belief system, um, you know, I've still got a little bit of a fear of God in me. I still have this, I'm still an ape. I'm still, I still contemplate, you know, life after death, if there is such a thing. I don't really believe there is, but there's always that little bit of part of you that hopes. All this is to say that I am aware that in Christian texts, pretty sure, Lucifer is a fallen angel, and Lucifer, Satan, the devil, he is the root of all evil. He is the embodiment of evil. And so when I hear that line about an angel falling, I think, oh, so Poldrone might perhaps be about the fall of Lucifer from heaven or whatever. And that would give context to the horrible, uh, overwhelming, dreadful sound of that song. Because what this song could be depicting is the event that then kicks off all evils that will ever happen for the rest of history. It's, I feel like that sums it up, right? That might make a horrible sound. I just grabbed a stress ball from off my dresser here. If I'm not walking, I feel like I have to be doing something with my hands. But even when I'm walking, I feel like I have to be doing something like that. I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, if anyone's wondering. I guess it doesn't entirely rule out the possibility, but I don't know. It seems kind of doubtful. Yeah, so that God-fearing part of me, that part of me that wants to believe in true evil or whatever, and still has this conception of a world ruled by evil and or infected with evil that spawns from this fallen angel Lucifer, hears this song that I interpret to be depicting these things and feels quite unsettled. I listen to Poldrone and I feel this almost sense of awe that's really hard to place. And maybe that's part of the reason why I've been thinking about souls a little bit more. Again, I have no reason to believe in souls. I don't at the moment believe in souls, but there's been music lately that's made me feel things that I've been having a difficult time putting a finger on. And that makes me want to grasp out at other explanations for why I'm feeling these things. And soul's one of them. Maybe this song is literally actually touching my soul and not just some gay metaphor. I think the reality is that brains are just very complicated machines, and there's some part of it that's being touched, and I just don't have the neural connections right now to fully process that. I suppose that's why I suppose it's a benefit that religion has, because there is something powerful. I imagine there would be something powerful about being in a giant fucking cathedral, having one of those big ass organs playing while a choir is singing to you, and the noise is just all reverberating around you, and they're using very powerful chords and specific song structures, melody structures to evoke a sense of awe. And like, especially if I'm a fucking 16th century peasant, sitting in this building that is so big it shouldn't be real, listening to this incredible noise only matched by things like, I don't know, thunderstorms, which could be very well seen as the wrath of God. Like, I don't know, I'd probably believe. I think that even in the age of enlightenment, it's difficult to blame someone for believing in the supernatural because there's still so much shit that just doesn't make sense to us humans, you know? Anyway, that's just the kind of stuff that I think about when I listen to Pole Drone. And also, I think, damn, dude, this sound fucks. I want more like this. I want more stuff that sounds like this. I mean, you don't have to make it 15 minutes long. I just don't know how many artists can do what Ethel Cain does because despite the song being incredibly long and like almost monotonous by nature, it doesn't drag for me. Like I'm engaged the whole way through just purely because of the powerful dark atmosphere of it. I also like the track that comes after it, but I can't remember its name. Oopsie. So that being said, the only other song I can really talk about off that album is Amber Waves. Fortunately, I can talk about that song. Amber Waves, in contrast to Pole Drone, which is like kind of an eerie, menacing sound, is a overwhelmingly melancholic song. And it's a similar thing. The entirety of the song is contextualized by a piece in the beginning where there's a conversation between what we can assume to be a doctor and a patient. And they seem to be discussing a medication which the patient agrees to take. She asks, how much should I take? And the doctor says, I believe you should take as much as you need to feel good again. And my little fuck ass brain thinks, oh, depression. She's being medicated for depression. And, fucking maybe she isn't. But then the song is like really slow and really sad sounding and really heavy and about someone clearly important to you leaving. And I think it would make sense for it to be depression. And I think that Amber Waves is sonically representing what depression feels like in a sense, Right. Okay, so yeah. Recently I watched a video. I wish I could remember the name of the YouTuber. Sorry. Maybe I'll go find it and link it in the description. I think I'll do that. I'll link that Zach's video on Ethel Cain too. It's like the most gut-wrenching albums. And the only one on that list, that's not true. I listened to the most recent Godspeed You Black Emperor album that is on that list, but I don't remember any of it and I didn't process it. But I'm definitely going to be listening to it again, not just because it's on that list, but because I was educated on what that album is about. And I think it's really cool. And I think that music about the genocide in Gaza is really important. So I feel like it deserves my attention. But anyway, the only other album on that list I had listened to was A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie, which is just um, there's not a lot of music that can make me cry. An Ethel Cain song has been getting close though. I'll talk about it. But that fucking album has reduced me to tears on multiple occasions. There's nothing particularly deep about why I feel that way. Because A Crow Looked at Me is a open wound of an album. It is just a raw examination of like the most powerful grief that a person can probably experience, probably only matched by like the loss of a child, you know? Like the songwriter knew his wife for quite a while. And, you know, it was his wife who clearly wasn't like one of those um, circumstantial marriages. He clearly deeply, deeply loved her. And so losing someone that close to you is going to be probably the worst thing that you ever experience, you know? There's no real way to like capture how soul crushing that experience would be, which is why in that album, on I believe the first track, he says something like all poetry is dumb. um, in specifically talking about like, you know, I guess depictions or discussions of death in poetry or lyrics or whatever. Right, because the opening track is called Real Death. And he says something like, when real death arrives or when it's here, all poetry is dumb. Because this is something I've talked about before on this channel. There is no, you cannot capture the totality of an experience in a piece of art. You just can't. Um, Even with less, like, you know, like impactful, I guess, experiences, the goal of art is only to share a piece of an experience, not capture it in all of its essence. And that's kind of the point being made with that. It's like, you know, I've had this urge as an artist. I'm feeling very strong things, and so I want to put it down into something. It's been poetry recently, funnily enough. And I imagine, you know, that's kind of what happened with Mount Erie's frontman. Perhaps feeling all these emotions, he wanted to put it into a song, but perhaps it felt like dumb because, like, how can you do that? But he does about as good of a job as anyone could do. I cannot believe he recorded that album like in the room she died in. That would be that album evokes such strong emotions out of me just by like empathy, I guess. Like the piece of the experience that he shares, it's there and I feel it. And it's horrible and it's heartbreaking. And yeah, I mean, people have talked about the album plenty, so I might as well get back to Ethel Cain, but it is something else. I think it's an experience worth having, but it is absolutely not a pleasant experience. Anthony Fantano's review of the album, he puts it very succinctly. It is definitely music, but what it is not is entertainment. I love that quote. It it's really good. Not all art is meant to be entertainment. Sometimes it is just an expression of very, very difficult feelings. And I would never listen to that album for entertainment. I'd listen to that album if I just really felt like crying. Or maybe if I felt like processing death, which is something that I'm not very good at. So, all that was to say that, as I've said before on this channel, you cannot capture the totality of depression in a song. There's too many facets of it. There's too much of it. Because again, the experience of being depressed is the experience of knowing depression and being submerged in it, immersed in it for years, you know. And Amber Waves is only 12 minutes long. So, you know, but again, you can get close. So, how close does Amber Waves get? About as close as I've heard from any other artist. Like, the that it being about depression is why it's such a long song. Well, it's also because it's a ambient album, but like the fact that the song is so slow and is so long and so like subdued is to capture the feeling of depression, because depression makes you feel that way. You know, it makes you feel lethargic. It makes you just feel sad and heavy. And it can really just make the days drag. And well, shit, I've just kind of summed it up right there. I just think Amber Waves is a really, really good, just a really good song, a like hauntingly beautiful song, especially the like latter half when Ethel stops singing. That isn't to say anything about Ethel's voice. Her voice is amazing, but that outro piece is really, really good. Yeah. Yeah. I have depression. What? No way. Um, so I feel like it's, you know, I have reason to say that Amber Waves is likely about depression, is trying to capture a little bit of what that mental illness feels like and what that state of mind feels like. But yeah, and those are some of the highlights of Perverts for me. Willoughby Tucker, I Will Always Love You. There's really only one song I want to talk about on this album, but you know, Janie, I think, is the opening track. That's a good song. I Sure Do Love Chords. There's gonna be, yeah, there's several songs on this album where most of what I can say is, God damn, that chord progression. I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to be able to string chords together and immediately make me nut. Because that's something that Ethel Cain does a lot, actually. And Janie is a great example of that. I love the chord progression in that song. So yeah. I've talked about the interludes. They're kind of whatever to me. They're well produced, that's for fucking sure. All of her music's incredibly produced, but you know, I don't find the contents of the song themselves that engaging. The little tone change in Willoughby's theme is cool. I'll say that much. Fuck Me Eyes is like it's a good song. It's don't click with me. But Nettles, fucking, it's a fucking banger. Nettles is a really, really great song. It's really, really good. It's not my favorite on the album, but it is a really good song. And that's kind of all I have to say about it. The 8 minutes wore on me at first, but I got used to it, and man, it just all works now. And something about um, that's something that when Ethel Cain does right, she does fucking right. Is the progression of her songs. Like Thoroughfare is another song that, despite its length, flows beautifully. Nettles flows beautifully. There's another song that flows beautifully. But anyway, yeah, and then after that was Willoughby's Interlude, I think, which is also 7 minutes long. Um, so Dust Bowl, right? This is the other example. I need to find what that opening chord in Dust Bowl is, because even just that, I love that opening chord. It has such a like. I have a hard time describing the feeling that chord like brings out in me. It's got like a dark tone to it, but it's very like specific. This is the cool thing about music, right? Like, you can find all kinds of ways to place why a particular choice arouses a particular feeling in you. Like, that's especially the case with like lyrics. You know, I'll get to lyrics in a bit, but lyrics I feel like are pretty easy to identify. Um, you can pretty easily identify why certain lyrics might make you feel a certain way. You can often do that with sound too. Like, gosh, why does this song in a minor key make me sad? Well, it's kind of what they're supposed to do. And it's easy to say when a song sounds sad, you know. But sometimes there are choices that musicians make that kind of exist beyond the boundaries of like your vocabulary. It's like being a kid again and learning what emotions are and how to like identify and categorize them, which isn't something that I remember because I'm 23 years old, but I am aware that that's a like thing that you have to teach kids. You have to teach them how to identify and categorize emotions because it's useful for communication and all that. But nowhere in my education have I been taught to identify the emotion that the opening chord in Dust Bowl by Ethel Cain makes me feel. So it was all kind of a waste, really. No. I kind of like that there's things like that. I feel like I like that there's certain things that exist, beyond the boundary of my understanding. Adds a bit of mystery to life. It's like, it's kind of cool that we're not 100% certain how they built the pyramids or Stonehenge. At this point, we're pretty fucking sure, but there's still like this air of mystery to it, and maybe we're just keeping the air of mystery to it alive, whether because we just love mystery or because Egypt still wants tourism, right? Well, okay. The pyramids would still be incredibly impressive even if we exactly knew how they were built. But again, there's something to the fact that there's some mystery to it. It's just kind of neat. And I think it's neat that this collection of notes when played together, make me feel something that I can't describe. But whatever it is, it's a really cool feeling. There's also some really great progressions in that song. Of course, the like centerpiece that I know people focus on is when the electric guitar comes in after Vietnam, the line Vietnam. It's good, but I don't think it hit me as hard as it did for other people. I think it's a good song. I feel like it could definitely grow on me more. There's a song after that that I don't remember the name of. It's all right. Radio Towers is whatever IMO. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know that Ethel does ambient stuff, and I know that like Perverts does work for me in a lot of ways, but I just don't feel like the atmosphere of some of these interludes is potent enough to capture me like Perverts does. So the highlight of Radio Towers is when that shift happens and you get like a, well, I guess there's a chord progression throughout if I'm remembering correctly. What I'm trying to say is the transition to Tempest is really cool. Tempest is a really good song. Maybe it drags a little bit. That's kind of my feeling on it right now. I'm not engaged all the way through Tempest, unfortunately. But it I do love the sound of that song. It has a very, very like it has a fucking presence to it. It's not loud in the same way that like a metal song is loud, but it is also like kind of loud, you know. And I also recognize that the outro being, you know, an eternity long is intentional because during the outro, Ethel repeats the line forever. And if you go into Genius lyrics, they list forever 4 times, even though it's stated more than that. And each individual instance of forever has its own annotation. So evidently, the line forever is meaningful. And of course, you know, there's the inherent like meaning of repeating it, like, oh, it's like she's repeating it forever because it's the word is forever, and that's what forever means. It means never ending, just like this line is never ending because she keeps repeating it, you know. And of course, you know, if you're going to keep repeating it, might as well repeat it a while just to really give the listener the impression of eternity. Because this outro fucking lasts an eternity. You can probably hear me bouncing the ball against my fucking waist here. I'm sorry, I'm a fidgeter. Fidgeter. Enunciation. So yeah, I'm not super engaged all the way through, but Tempest is a really good song. All right, but none of that matters because Waco, Texas is one of the greatest songs I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. I have a playlist of songs that I consider masterpieces because it's not a term that I use very lightly. Um, I'll probably link it in the description along with a bunch of other shit, apparently. Uh, it actually has a surprising number of like plays, views, listens, whatever. Which is probably largely coming from like some prog metal fans because for a long time it was pretty much entirely like metal stuff. But you know, I've inserted some diversity in there at this point. You got 14.3 billion years by Andrew Provo from the Outer Wilds soundtrack. You've got uh, You've got three Violet Pony songs, actually. Sludge, Huntress, and Walking Beside a Dragonfly. And now you've got Waco, Texas. Normally it takes a while for me to listen to a song enough to consider it a masterpiece. Waco, Texas was relatively quick. I've just been listening to it a fucking lot over just the past 2 days. Yeah, I must have listened to the song like fucking 5 or 6 times uh, just today, which is over an hour of the same song. Because this fucking 15-minute behemoth of a song is captivating the entire way through. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how you do that, especially with like the nature of the song. Because like a lot of the songs on this album, it's a slow burn. It is a slow, relatively understated song for the majority of its runtime. Maybe not the majority, but like for at least the first half, it's, I won't say simple because sound design isn't simple. And there's a lot of sound design going on here to make this sound as incredible as it does. But, there's not a ton going on, at least comparatively, in like the instrumentation. But then, of course, the song builds at basically the perfect pace. I think the pacing on Waco, Texas is fucking incredible. So again, I'm in the whole way through. I'm engaged. It never gets boring. Maybe it did at first, but now Waco, Texas and I are tight. We understand each other. And so I'm along for all 15 minutes of the ride. And God, what a ride it is. Again, difficult to conjure the vocabulary necessary to express how I feel when I listen to this song, especially when those last verses start coming in and that last chorus, when the guitars start coming in, when her vocals start becoming harmonized. It's ascension. It's like a transcendental sound. It's monumental, it's emotional, it's like rich and profound. It's like, again, it's hard to put into words. And then fucking after the last line, it'll never be good enough like I want to believe it is. It is. It is. It doesn't go like that. But my throat is dry, so I'm not even going to attempt hitting those notes. Then the second guitar comes in, and this like choir of background vocals enters the scene as well. And it's like the outro to Sun Beached Flies, but honestly better. And so I get sent to another plane of reality in which this like profound sorrow is also manifesting itself in indescribable beauty, and that makes everything kind of all right, even if it's difficult. I'm letting interpretation of lyrics seep in a little bit, but that's just inevitable with music with lyrics. The lyrics are going to color the sound somewhat, but even without lyrics, it sounds so good. And there's only so much I can do to impress that upon you, dear listener, without you listening to the song. Okay, Ethel Cain, especially Willoughby Tucker and Perverts, isn't for everyone, right? But I implore you to at least try it. Waco, Texas is in a league of its own in terms of music. I need to stress this. This song is unfucking believable. There's a reason I've listened to it like 6 or 7 times today. It's so fucking good. Words cannot possibly do it justice. And hopefully sometime soon I'll get the opportunity to get really fucking high and just lay in bed and listen to it. And I'll probably start fucking sobbing. Because the more I listen to this song, the closer to tears I get when those last verses start coming in. That's partly because the song's so fucking beautiful, and it's partly because of the lyrics. Hey everyone. You want to talk about lyrics? I want to talk about lyrics. So, thumping the ball against my bed here. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'm sorry. This is just the way I am. So, the lyrics to Waco, Texas describe a relationship. A tenuous relationship that is doomed to fail. Something star-crossed lovers. And, you know, I've been in my fair share of relationships that didn't work out, 4 to be exact. If we're just talking romantic. But the big point of like relation with this song comes with how I connect it to a friend that I used to have. And this is not a story that I've even communicated on this channel yet, which is kind of crazy because it's like it's my number one sob story. It's like, it's one of the most difficult things I've been through, the dissolving of this friendship. And both that person and the disillusionment of this relationship informs a lot of who I am today and how I like think about things and go about things. There's a lot to it. Maybe one day I'll just like share it, but I don't know, because this individual and I aren't friends anymore, but we've talked a little bit after things went south, and I feel like we're on okay terms now. But even when we weren't, like I've never wished ill on them. Ill wished, jeez. I don't know. I was getting words mixed up there. You must excuse me. I've been talking for almost an hour straight, and my throat is upset with me. So, I've never had ill will towards them, but especially since we're on okay terms, I just like kind of want to respect their privacy. So, I don't know how I feel about telling like the whole fucking story and all the details of our friendship. What I can say is that our relationship was very much colored by my condition, which was depression. So when we met, I was, in terms of emotional state, doing like okay-ish. That's because I had unaddressed depression. I was off my medication at that point just because I stopped taking it. And I thought things were kind of hunky-dory because, I had my long distance boyfriend who was too old for me, and I don't know. I was busy with high school, and I don't know. It reared its head in some ways, but overall, if you had asked me at the time, I would have said like, yeah, I feel okay. I'm doing okay. Life's all right. And then I broke up with that boyfriend. It all came fucking crashing down. I entered a period of intense depression, like the worst of my life. Um, and that friend was there to witness all of it. Of course, they didn't just witness it, I need to be careful with how I word things in order to be gracious to myself. They were there for me for a lot of it. And what that meant is that they spent a lot of time and energy talking me through these feelings and these thoughts that depression were giving me. And they were there for a lot of my breakdowns. They were there for, at the time, frankly, most of my meltdowns, bouts of self deprecation, bouts of nihilism, all that. Like, and again, they spent a lot of time and energy taking care of me. Not only taking care of me, but trying to help me treat this depression and gain a better mindset. And a lot of what they taught me is a lot of what I use today to manage these feelings when they come up. And it's the things I've tried teaching other people when I learn that they have depression, or I'm talking to them about this stuff. But anyway, our entire relationship was colored by, you know, the fact that I hated myself, and I, for the majority of our relationship, didn't truly believe that they cared about me, and that they were, one wrong move away from just abandoning me. Because I didn't feel like I deserved them. I didn't feel like I was good for them. Um, yeah. And then one day, they kind of stopped talking to me. When they did start talking to me, it was infrequent. And I learned that they wanted distance from me because I had mentally exhausted them. So, in a way, my fears were warranted. There, it's a complicated situation. There's a lot of factors in it, a lot to do with them. I'll just say they have a very difficult life, and they've had enough shit to deal with, frankly. So I don't really blame them for becoming mentally exhausted, especially now that I've experienced something similar and experienced very similar exhaustion. So, you know, they're not a bad person for it. Quite the opposite. They're one of the best, most patient people I know. But everybody's patience has a limit, and they reach theirs, and that's kind of started the slow decline of our friendship. So, Waco, Texas. The content of the song is that, you know, Willoughby at some point leaves Ethel. And, some of the implication is that it's because of some of the issues that she has But of course, Willoughby himself is a very troubled individual, to put it lightly. He seems like low key suicidal, based on some of the lyrics that come from his perspective. But Ethel's got her own signs of depression. Like when she asks, "Are you angry? Do you hate me?" Likely, directed at Willoughby. Because when you're depressed, or when you've had depression and still have the roots of that mindset still lingering in your brain, that is something that you ask often. One fucking slip up, one thing is all it takes for you to worry that this person that loves you all of a sudden is going to flip on you. Any negative emotions directed at you are a sign of hatred and a sign that it's all over. This is it. This is the end of your friendship. And I see that expressed in some of those lines from Ethel. If you're hearing commotion, I'm moving to the couch because the couch has a more reachable charger, and my phone's probably really low on battery. But yeah, so that's one layer. Um, fucking wow, I kind of relate to Ethel here when she's worried that Willoughby hates her for one reason or another. Like it's a constant paranoia when you have depression, and then when you're like me, I'd say post depression, but still dealing with the ramifications of having that be part of your mind. Uh, you can be pretty easily set off. I'm pretty easily set off. It is not hard for me to suddenly flip to that mindset of, oh fuck, did I do something wrong? Oh my god, did they hate me? And then sorry, I'm like thinking back to the lyrics. You know what? I deserve a break again. I've been listening for a fucking hour straight. And even though I'd like this to be one big recording to make editing very slightly easier, I might pause to go look at the lyrics and get a fucking drink. Yeah. All right. I wonder if I'll listen back to this recording and think like, God damn, take a fucking drink, man. You sound so hoarse. Uh, anyway. Yeah. That final verse and chorus, Jesus Christ, some of those lines. I never meant to hurt you, but somehow I knew I would. Oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of. Yeah, I mean, that's a very. That's a thought that I had when that situation went down between that friend and I. Because, when she. Well, there it is. When she told me. I know it doesn't narrow it down much, but when she told me that it was exhausting just to talk to me, like, I got the impression that I had hurt her, or I'd exhausted her. I'd made life more difficult for her, which I'd never meant to do. But I said so many times to her that she'd get tired of me, that all this would wear on her eventually. And it did. So, sorry, I just heard something in my kitchen. I don't think it's anything, but. I don't think I left anything on. Whatever. Yeah. Never meant to hurt her, but I always assumed I would. Reach inside you and fix you if I could. One of the main things, one of the main struggles that she has is she has a lot of medical issues. And of course, because I cared about her a whole fucking lot, I expressed many times that I wish I could just fix all that for her. You know, partially because, you know, it's natural for a friend to want to fix their friend's problems to make them feel better. But also because I had very little self worth, and so I placed a lot of my self worth on my ability to help her. And it constantly like weighed on me that I couldn't fix these issues for her because, you know, it's like what I'm supposed to do as her friend, and she's doing all this for me, and like what am I doing for her? If I could just reach inside and if I could just reach in her and fix her, fix all these issues for her, then, you know, maybe I'd be worthwhile. Maybe this would be an equivalent exchange. She's the one that taught me the phrase friendship isn't transactional, which I still try to use and still try to live by. Um, I think it's safe to say it was pretty unequal, but I it's not that's not the kind of thought I'm going to try to dwell on because it's not very useful, I guess. There are ways that we should have gone about our relationship that don't revolve around that concept. And then the last chorus, um, you know, I held you in my arms, said I'd be good to you or good for you, or whatever. One of the, you know, most heartbreaking parts about learning that you've hurt someone or irreparably damaged their ability to even interact with you, like I did, is that you promised not just like by being their friend, but likely verbally that you'd be good for them, you know. But of course, you know, the contradiction being that I also insisted that I'm bad for her. But you know, you want to be good to them. You say that you're gonna be to either make up for where you feel your lack or just to be a good friend. And you know, it's natural. You say you're gonna be good, you find out you weren't. It's tough. You know, it was really tough to hear that because it essentially confirmed my like worst fears. Let's see if I can remember some other lines. So I waited and tried till it killed me. What happened was, again, we started talking a lot more inconsistently. I'm sure partially because, you know, there was still the memory of me exhausting her. Maybe I still was to some extent. And I was so afraid of interacting with her because I thought like one slip up and she could just be gone for, I don't know, like another week or for good, maybe. At one point, I finally stated that. I finally confronted her about it, saying, like, look, I feel so anxious talking to you because, like, I feel like I I feel like I can't talk to you because I'm afraid that you're gonna leave, or something to that degree. I know I finally put my foot down and confronted her on something. This was well over 2 years ago now. Almost three at this point, actually. We're in September. I think it was, yeah, I think it was October of 2022. Yeah, yeah. It was October of 2022, I'm pretty sure, when I finally cut contact with her, which happened after a month of straight up radio silence. Yeah, after that confrontation, you know, I expressed my desire to like talk things out, to make things work, to repair our relationship. But evidently, she needed space, and so I gave it to her. I checked in a couple times, but I tried to give her that space for a month. But it was constantly weighing on me. For the duration of that month, you know, I was still doing stuff, you know, as much as I did back then. I was in college. I was like, I met a couple people. I was getting involved in a little community surrounding a webcomic, um, you know, making friends there. And I thought life was good. And I was doing all right. And I remember at one point thinking, you know, the only thing really troubling me right now is that I don't know how this person feels about me. I don't know where we're at. At one point, after another ignored message, and after a little, like, thing that happened, I guess I can summarize it quickly. I got an invite to a Discord server from her without a word, and I just kind of accepted because I thought, hey, maybe, you know, this is how the reparations start. I was then kicked without a word, and I didn't know what the fuck that meant. That night I couldn't sleep because my anxiety was so bad, and I finally decided that something had to give. No matter what happened, I need to ask. And so I did. I asked, like, do you even want to talk to me anymore? Um, she said that until I go to therapy and figure my shit out, the answer is no. And I didn't bother responding because that was kind of it to me. And it did end up being it because at this point I don't see us becoming friends again, to be honest. I hoped for a long, long time, but you know, We're different people at this point. I haven't gone to therapy yet, but no, another woman in my life is strongly imploring me to, so I might end up doing it. And especially lately, I've just been learning how, like, fucked I am. This one took a turn, didn't it? So I waited and tried till it killed me. That's what happened. I waited. I tried to be patient. I tried to be gracious, but at a certain point, I just couldn't keep guessing. I couldn't keep wondering. And so something had to give, something had to break. Again, I'm really trying to not make this like a condemnation of her. I don't know fully why she made the decisions that she did, so I can't entirely judge her for them. What I'm saying is that with the way things were, I couldn't handle it. And so I made the decision that I did based on my needs at that time. I can wait if I want, but it'll never be good enough like I want to believe it is. Jesus, man. That one can be applied to that situation too, you know. Um, at a certain point, we weren't going to get back to the way things were. Like, I wanted to believe so bad that we could repair things, but after all that, it couldn't possibly be the same. And just things like that happen, you know. It's one of the many tragedies, like specific tragedies that can occur. Just, it can be entirely outside of a person's control. Um, just something happens between two people, and now their relationship just can't be the same. The two of them might want to, you know, have something together, but there might just be this inexorable conflict, this thing that comes between them that can't be like reconciled. But stagnation is another interpretation of that line. I talked about stagnation last episode for 2.5 hours. Um, you can wait if you want, but if all you're doing is waiting, then it'll never be good enough. You can't make things good by waiting. And that isn't to say that waiting wasn't the correct choice for me. Like sometimes a person does need space, and sometimes you just need to wait for them to feel ready to engage with you or something else again. But in most places in life, you can't just wait for things to become good. And I guess that's just kind of hit me because, I don't know, like, I like to think I'm not stagnating. I'm doing things to forward myself, but um, there's some laziness in me, right? And it's human nature to stagnate, so I've stagnated at times. There's areas in which I stagnate. I really want to write music. What am I doing to forward that goal? Nothing. I'm kind of reaching the end of my train of thought here. I can feel it. And I got a message from someone, and now that's sticking in my mind that I should reply to that. Yeah, so Ethel Cain is pretty cool. Yeah, I wanted to wrap it back to Ethel Cain because I'm sure I was going to make some big broad point about the lyrics. I guess the point I can make right now is that the lyrics and that song hit me like a fucking truck, partly because just I see myself in the lyrics. Um, the lyrics really do describe just something that can unfortunately happen, and it can really shape your life, and it's really heartbreaking. It can be really heartbreaking when that happens. But then, of course, the song is fucking outstanding and gorgeous and heartbreaking, and it's basically a perfect song. That's why I consider it a masterpiece. I think it's the best song that Ethel Cain has ever written. Better than Tolamaya, better than Sun Beach Flies. Certainly my favorite, if we want to be more subjective about it. There's probably other things that I wanted to talk about regarding Ethel Cain. I know I talked. Fucking hell. I bumped my guitar that I haven't played in weeks. Um, but I did end up talking about Ethel Cain a decent amount. Um, in Love and Pony Step 2, The Wrath of Cadence. I'm pretty sure. I know at one point I talked about like um, the I guess dichotomy between the sound of nettles and like the themes that Ethel Cain explores. So if you're interested in more talk about Ethel Cain, I've sprinkled it throughout some of these episodes. So you should probably just like listen to all my recordings just to really know my thoughts on her as an artist. Uh, but yeah, I'm not as crazy about Ethel Cain as some of the other gay people, but she is really cool. And it'll be cool to see where she goes from here, especially as she drops the Ethel Cain moniker. I think that's about it. Um, read my blog, freaks. Um, the first the first drafts of the first two chapters of my book are almost finished. They're going to be up on my blog when they're ready. And one of these days, I got to talk about arches. So maybe that'll be for next time, or maybe some other thing will come up that I desperately want to talk about to my phone camera. I guess we'll see.